I screwed up that taping, didn't I? Okay, another Diary of the Griever named John Weaver, which is me for Sunday, the 22nd of February, 2026. It's only a little after 8:22 in the morning. Bye. So I mentioned about the religion as a tie-in for this particular video here because I was watching MSNBC, actually MS Now, discussing what the religious aspect is changing in this country, and I'm trying to understand Christianity versus white Christianity versus what Christianity in itself is supposed to be. And I am going back over to the times and teachings of what I had been, if you want to call it, indoctrinated. But I hadn't been indoctrinated when I was the age of 4 years old. I mean, I had open heart surgery at the age of 4 years old, and I experienced the power of God. Literally. Kept telling me it was my time to go upstairs. Kept putting me back in my body while it worked on my heart. Valves leaking. 3 times up, 3 times back. There was a reason. I just don't know why. Maybe I'm learning it. I don't know. But the other thing I understand that coming across the New Testament a great deal versus the Old Testament. The Old Testament would teach us about eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, and being pissed off left and right. I'm going to turn on Velsi right now. I think we need to hear something.
Netanyahu returned as Israel's prime minister, bolstered by
this may not be really
right-wing allies in the Israeli parliament. Almost immediately, his new government declared the expansion of Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank to be its highest priority. But the spotlight there was sidelined by intervening events. Mass protests in Israel against Netanyahu's attempts to undermine the judiciary and Hamas's bloody attack on October 7, 2023, which triggered Israel's destructive 2-year war in Gaza. But violence has surged in the West Bank as Israel expands settlements on land that the Palestinians want for a future state. The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs in Jerusalem oversees international responses to emergencies inside the Palestinian territories. It recorded 1,828 Israeli settler attacks against West Bank Palestinians last year, marking the highest number since 2006. Amid the escalating violence, Israel has tightened restrictions on Palestinians who are restricted to non-contiguous zones that are surrounded by Israeli settlements that most of the world says are illegal, but Israel says are not. Military checkpoints that are in between those non-contiguous zones curb their movement between them. Under a deal struck in the Oslo Accords of 1993, Area A, which is the dark orange on your screen, are areas that are administered by the Palestinian Authority, which is affiliated with the PLO. Area B, which we don't have on here, shares security control with Israel. Area C, which is all that area, we have to discuss not making two sort of yellowy things on the same map, but Area C is under full Israeli control and takes up more than 60% of the West Bank, which is the area that is outlined in yellow. Throughout, the settlers are seizing hilltops and attacking Palestinians in nearby towns and villages. Even Ehud Olmert, the former Israeli prime minister, described the situation in scathing terms last month, referring to the settlers committing violence as rioters and Jewish terrorists. Quote, "The rioters, the Jewish terrorists, storm Palestinians with hate and violence with one objective, to force them to flee from their homes en route to realizing the dream of annexing all the territories in the West Bank." According to the United Nations, at least 1,053 Palestinians have died in West Bank violence since late 2023. In fact, last week, a Palestinian-American teenager named Nasrallah Abu Siam was shot dead while trying to prevent a group of Israeli settlers from stealing livestock, according to witnesses who spoke to the New York Times. According to his father, Nasrallah was born in the United States, but spent most of his life in the West Bank. He was laid to rest on Thursday. The Israeli government is accelerating moves toward formal annexation of the West Bank, which would extend Israel's full sovereignty over it. It's starting a new land registry process for Palestinians and issuing permits to build 19 new Israeli settlements, including one near Jerusalem, that will effectively cut the West Bank in two. For the first time since 1967, when Israel captured the West Bank, many parts of it will be registered as Israeli state property under a new law. Palestinians will be forced to present documentation proving ownership of their land to the Israeli government, which will approve or deny their claims, making way for bureaucratic annexation in the West Bank. More than 80 United Nations member states have condemned the move, and UN Undersecretary Rosemary DiCarlo spoke out at the UN Security Council on Wednesday.
We're witnessing the gradual de facto annexation of the West Bank as unilateral Israeli steps steadily transform the landscape. If implemented, these measures will constitute a dangerous expansion of Israeli civil authority in the occupied West Bank.
Israel's finance minister Bezalel Smotrich has been explicit about his government's intentions. On Tuesday, he said it should, quote, encourage the migration of Palestinians from the West Bank and impose Israeli sovereignty there. Quote, in the long term, there is no other solution, Smotrich said. We must complete the revolution and eliminate the idea of an independent state. We must complete the revolution and eliminate the idea of a Palestinian state. After a quick break, I'll talk to Ben Rhodes, former Deputy National Security Advisor.
And I was going to be talking about religion, and here we are talking about religion being invasive in a form and format. That ancient clashes that the Old Testament talked about is still prevalent to this day. And speaking about the clashes we've got these days, U.S. Constitution versus religion. And you have a white nationalist pastor who forced Pentagon officials to pray. Now the thing is, as I understood, there was not any chapel in Pentagon, or I may be mistaken on that one. But the Pentagon was supposed to be the armed forces, is supposed to be part of the state. And according to the Constitution, there's supposed to be a separation between church and state. But when you have religion being forced upon others in the state, it's like, what am I looking at here? In one particular format, one person who was interviewed on MS Now this morning has written many books about it. There has to be a certain point of view being forced upon people. Example, that other points of view of the same religion or the same type, it wasn't shared by everybody else, and it would be barred and discriminated against. So how do you discriminate against Christianity or the followers of Christ, in a way? You put racial hatred in Christianity and expect everybody else to worship God and Jesus in one fashion, and that's about it. But limiting others in many ways because they're not Christian, they're not supposed to be Christian. Only male whites are supposed to be Christian. So you had that kind of pastor going in the Pentagon this past week, forcing that shit upon soldiers by the Secretary of Defense. The War Secretary. It seems when we voted this shit in for a second time, did we really understand that we were voting in a racial hatred? Because we already saw how it was back in 2020 when the racial hatred was going all over the place in politics. And one person who wanted that to happen and supported racial hatred. So now it's more prevalent in the second term of this asshole. And spreading about everywhere else that we have to worship or be this way. That women and minorities, or actually women and people of different colors, backgrounds, base, if they're not of one type, then they are the enemy and treated as such. How did Christ do this? I would go back through the scriptures of the New Testament on how Christ was supposed to be teaching what God was supposed to be, according to the viewpoints that were being presented in the Bible. And he wanted the laws upheld, but there was the greatest of laws to love, to be of faith, to be of kindness and respect. Didn't matter who or what the stranger was, welcome him in. If the stranger needed anything, you'd help provide. If they just needed a place to rest for a few minutes or a little time, there wouldn't be any problem, would there? If someone was sick, you'd visit them or take care of them or whatever you could. You would show the hand of kindness and mercy to whoever the stranger was, whatever the stranger was. And of this, Christ had asked people to follow him in these actions, these forms of faith. Show God that there are people that actually cared. That they would believe in Jesus, they would believe in God. Believing is one thing. Said before in some of my videos, I died, came back, and didn't know what religion was at the age of 4. I had to be taught, I had to be indoctrinated into Methodism. I didn't mind. Took me a long time to understand, as everything else does. I understand what faith and how it works, and what form and fashion it is. It doesn't matter if it's designated as Muslim or Jewish, or Judaism, Hinduism, a faith of something greater beyond you are. And understanding that wisdom, that power, and that thing above us is the one in charge, not us. Even though we can screw things up left and right. But how are we supposed to ignore everything of Christ's following and yet try to be one of what's Christ? Now the thing is, we can be believing in God and believing in Jesus, as I was hearing from other religious folk. I'm supposed to be, yeah. It's like forced upon, or am I choosing? My choice is to believe that God still exists, because there's been evidence in my life that God still exists. He's still working at it. He still tolerates a schmuck like me in the first place. How does Jesus deal with a schmuck like me in the first place? Well, he deals with me. I'm struggling with the faith. I'm struggling with how to believe in him in a form and fashion that I can understand and grasp. But everyone else wants obedience. They want control. They want everybody to be in one particular cultist mindset. And I'm sorry, I can't do that. Christ didn't ask for cultists, but they labeled him as such. And in political terminology, they would consider him a domestic terrorist, because he would go against what the Jewish elders back then would teach, and not to mention what the Roman Empire would deal with. Anybody going against and breaking Caesar's laws, they would have a problem with Christianity. And they did, because he was going against the grain. And his followers were going against the grain. That's why they persecuted him, and prosecuted, and pursued him, and killed him. There's one convert, a guy named Saul, turned into Paul. Saul was a prosecutor, hired by the church and by Caesar, I guess, trying to find Christians or the followers of Christ who were teaching. And once he found them, prosecute, persecute, execute. Saul had an experience on the road. Sorry, I'm itchy. Gotta get a shower. Saul had an experience on the road. Got blinded by it. Experience was the Spirit of Jesus coming and telling me, why are you persecuting me? Saul gave his reasons. I guess Jesus and God had a different way of educating him by blinding him. That you couldn't see differences, but you could hear and feel the differences. But then you'd be one of those who needed human compassion. Experience it firsthand. And understand the teachings until you got his sight back and realized through his transformation he was changed into a different person and a different name. It wasn't on the outside, it was his mind and his heart. His soul got changed. He no longer wanted to pursue and persecute. He wanted to help and spread the word. And it had taken acts of kindness and of education to understand this. Not of force, not of blade, not of blood, not of pain. Unless he was going through his own pain and had to be educated. Sometimes even through our own agonies, even through my own agonies, I have to be realizing who's in charge. Yes, I can have agonies in my body. Believe me, I got a lot of them. I remember laying in a hospital bed, waiting just for a CT scan. And I got it, but in a way, I was also worrying about taking care of her. The first time I go into an ER, and I'm worried about my dog. I get a message, she's all right. That was a relief. And I had to relax, because everything else happening during that time, I was scared shitless. I was. And I was reaching out. Just praying underneath my breath and asking Jesus and God to help. They knew how much I didn't like the medical establishment. And I had to go through it. And there have been other times that hurt like hell afterwards. I'm still dealing with it. I can't complain about it. Just ways of trying to make sure the body still lasts for a little bit longer time. But it's also a spiritual experience and awakening. You had to come to it willingly and ask. I've already been educated and already been indoctrinated, but the thing is, I had to be willing. I'm still learning the hard way, as it should be. But I cannot force this stuff down people's throats. I cannot put myself on the pulpit and say, I am an example of God and you will listen to me because I say so. And my word is considered the law of the land and whatever kind of crap is coming out of my damn mouth at that point. Just to make sure that you're convinced that you're going to be following the way I think you should, because I'm telling you. And I'm seeing too many people do that. In the name of God, in the name of Jesus, in the name of something. We must worship and we must have this thing. The Constitution of the United States would give us plurality, would give us the freedom for our own individuals to worship in a way that's for us and not push it down people's throats. Of course, we could have organized religions do that, but we have the option and law by law to do that. But not to have conformity of a cultist. And I'm hearing, seeing too many damn cultists out there, both in politics and in religion. They want a single mindset. They also want to promote hatred. Because that's the only way for them to understand how to worship God is through hate. It takes a lot to realize that even the simplest tasks that Christ would ask for us. If you are a Christ follower, if you're a follower of Jesus Christ, if you are a Christian following this particular pathway, it's not saying that I'm following a religion. No, 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 no. It's not that. Christ never asked for a religion. He never did form a religion himself or wanted that. He always kept talking about the kingdom of God. But in politics, we screw that up left and right. If you're going to be a follower of Christ, these are the ways. These are the simplest ways. You can check out all 4 chapters in the Bible on that one. Matthew, Luke, Mark, John. I like Luke. I don't know. I liked Luke. Matthew was okay. John and the others were just dry. But there have been other things down the road, even in Acts, that I hadn't read all through or briefed about. Thing is, I don't like religion being forced down people's throats. I don't like it when it has an official capacity in government. I have been raised under the U.S. Constitution being separating power, religion, and government. We have the power to send our grievances out, to display them, to talk about them, to realize the government needs to hear my grievances, and therefore I am granted that boon. And they will hear. But not to the point where we're saying, well, I heard you, but then fuck you, you have to follow this particular line of form of fashion. Oh, by the way, here's a religion that you have to follow here. Are you a Christian? Am I a follower of Christ? Yes. Struggling, but yes. No, that's not what I asked. Are you a Christian? You look white, so you got to be a Christian. Or are you of that faith? Of Jewish? I'm a follower of Christ. I was baptized a Christian. I was baptized a Methodist. I ain't perfect in my religion. I'm not perfect in my faith. Now, what was read in the Bible is I am perfected by their grace. But for me, I'm one screwed up human being because I mess up. Either by choice, by design, or by both. I don't know. I get tempted, I screw it up, and I have to pray for it. I have to pray for forgiveness on that one. If I'm going to be helping a person out, I'm doing it without reward. If I'm going to be saying or doing something, it has to be without reward. I don't want it. But now where I'm forcing my shit down people's throats saying, you must, you must, you must. I'm not saying you must. That's on you. That's on you, not on me. I'm not saying you're going to be forced to do this and you've got to be doing this because I said so. No. Never is. I'm doing the best I can of understanding things beyond me. It's scary to a lot of people. They don't want to know it. They don't want to understand it. They just want to be complicit. They want to be compliant. They want to be led by it because they don't want to think of anything else. They don't want to think or feel or question. Even questioning God. Here's the thing. Questioning God. Am I allowed to question God? I would think God would would understand. I think God would understand that I question, that I need answers. And if it's a pathway I need to learn, then it's a pathway I need to learn. If it's an instant, well, okay. Then what? Then what? I don't know. But tell me, we'll both know. I am not forcing shit down people's throat. I'm saying what's on my mind, what I'm observing, what I'm going through. There have been some times in my videos that I tried to do what YouTube keeps asking its members to do, to be part of it, which means forcing people to do the comments, likes, and I've seen other people extend a hand and saying, money, 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 because I got crap to tell you. I ain't doing that shit. At least not on this date, not on this time. I'm not asking. I'm not pleading. I'm not demanding. You're going to make your donations, you make your donations to other people. I'm just doing what I got to do right now. I've said for right now. I haven't even had breakfast yet. I'm doing this shit. Yeah, and I'm also dealing with a dog that's barely asleep on my arms, and I'm going to be putting her down, and she's going to be hating me for that. She's going to be whining her head off. But I got a body that's deserving and screaming for fuel, and blood sugar, and everything else going on. Oh, by the way, if you happen to see any warehouses being converted into ICE warehouses, as in storing people, boy, are you in trouble.